Hi, good evening. Welcome to this curriculum mapping session geared at alignment. For this session, I do want to focus on seventh grade science, and I will be focusing especially on the unit structure and function of living organisms. Now, before I even get into this session, the first thing I want us to be aware of is that this topic is actually seen throughout this unit topic. The exact title is seen throughout grades 5, 6, 7, and 8. Um, and you will see some of it in ninth grade biology, but because biology does look at the entire structure and function of living organisms, not so much. Um, to give you a better context of, okay, there we go. The framework of this entire unit is on this basic statement that I have written there, which is the basic unit of all life. And I purposefully chosen to show, different cells just to ensure that we're all aware that this unit, even though it says the structure and function of living organisms or um, the, the meat of it does go back to cells. Now, let's get into this alignment. Now, to kick things off, I do also want to share with you another file, and this is going back to what the state puts out as the standards that we do need to cover. Now, starting with fifth grade, like I said, it's mentioned through fifth through eighth grade. Fifth grade does talk about cells and it does talk about the body and the different systems that are there, but it does not go too far in depth. Then when we get to sixth grade, it takes a completely different trajectory. And what we see here is not so much cells and living, and not so much animals or humans for that matter, but more so we see the emphasis is now on flowering plants, their survival, reproduction, defense, photosynthesis, respiration, all key terms. But at the same time, it does not take a cellular focus. It takes on that more process or function that is happening in the cells. However, grade 7, which is our focus, we do see the focus on single cell versus multicellular, and of course the extension of this is to get into those major body systems um, in humans. And then lastly, looking at grade 8, the last thing I wanted to point out was that there's absolutely no mention of cells, even though we do recognize that we must revisit it because we're going to talk about viruses and bacteria. So it kind of builds on the knowledge that we're going to acquire in seventh grade. However, it takes on a different toll because we're now looking at the spread of disease and how it is that disease is actually caused by organisms. Now, um, lastly, the final document I want to share with you is this curriculum map because this is the meat of what we need to look at. Now, this curriculum map, starts out with the unit objective that is coming from NCDPI. Understand the processes, structure, and function of living organisms that enable them to survive, reproduce, and carry out the basic functions of life. This standard is all encompassing, having so many different facets to it. And for this particular curriculum mapping session, I do want to focus on three of the major objectives that the state is pushing, and that is the comparison of the structures and function within single-celled and multicellular organism, and the vocabulary terms that students are actually expected to learn at this level goes into the idea of eukaryotes and prokaryotes, and we do talk about their structural and functional features of the different parts of those cells. Um, there is a fourth objective, but again, this mapping session is not focusing on that fourth one. We're going to focus only on these three. Now, of important note is those five key knowledge or understanding bullets or bullets that I do have right here. Let me just get the annotating tool real quick so we can mark on this a little bit and see what's going on. Okay, it's not coming up, but that's perfectly fine. We can still work around that. Now, if we look right here, we see all living things are made up of cells. That's the primary thing that students are expected to learn. And this kind of goes back to the whole thing of cell theory, the discovery of the cells, and just knowing that, just students knowing that basic information. Now, from this, we do get into eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. And of course, we do focus on those multicellular organisms, hence why we're going to focus on eukaryotes. And of course, we do get into the basic function of cells in the bodies. And then lastly, we recognize the human body as being this complex thing. And because it's complex, it does have many different cells, which are called specialized cells. And each specialized cell does have their individual function. Now, when we look at this, we start off with that definition as the definition being, and this is what I said earlier, the unit of all living things. This is what every single living thing is made up of. We may have some that just we may have some that only have one cell, or we may have another one that has many different cells, but at the same time, every single living thing is made up of a cell. Now, like I said, a big part of this is that comparison, comparing and contrasting. Now, we're going to see this with both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. We're going to see it when we do get into eukaryotic cells. Then we start looking at plant and animal cells. And for this, what I have there is that we're going to actually have students create microscope size. And I want this to actually be one of the objectives simply because it's absolutely important that students do start to get that lab work in their science classes and not have it be so theory based, because students do fail, especially for a unit like cells where we can't see them with our naked eyes. And as such, it's important that students do get to see them beneath the microscope. And for this topic, this unit, just make sure that there is clarity. It's important that we do both an animal cell and a plant cell. The easiest ones, of course, is going to be an onion epithelial cell, and of course, an animal cheek cell, talking about just taking a buccal swab and doing a very simple stain on a slide. Now, from this, kids are going to go ahead and draw. Students are going to go ahead and view beneath the microscope. But the secondary skill outside of the experimentation and working in the laboratory is that reporting skill. And as such, the next objective just involves students drawing from the light microscope. This is one of those technical skills that will be investigated further on in sciences, particularly in biology in the 9th or 10th grade, where students will then be required to make annotated diagrams, annotated biological drawings. And as such, this will be a very good introduction for students here. Next, we talk about the differentiation between the structure and the function. And again, we're getting into the fact that their bodies are made up of many different types of cells. Now, many different cells, because we're not going to get into all of that. We're going to get into the different types of cells. And what that is going to look like is students just getting a better understanding of their bodies and how it is that they're actually made up. And then lastly, just doing a comparison between themselves and a microscopic organism, or a comparison of themselves with a smaller organism where their systems are not as developed. Now, out of all of this, we do have several learning targets, understanding the cell theory, more importantly, just what are cells, how were cells discovered, and how it is that the light microscope was actually invented so as to be able to see cells. We're continuing, of course, with recognizing the different functions that our bodies carry out and how it is that these can be attributed to cellular activity. That is absolutely important because students do have to recognize that their bodies do have different types of cells. And then lastly, we talk about that composition of their bodies compared to another organism in terms of cellular composition. Um, like I said, one of the learning targets, and this one is rather personal for me, and that is just viewing the cells beneath the microscope, because I think it's a really enriching experience. And I can remember back when I was a student in high school, and I had the opportunity to create my own slides and view them beneath the microscope, and I thought it was just really enriching. So, really important for me in this curriculum map and ensuring that we do get our students prepared for the next level, and also, more importantly, mastering the standard. In terms of classroom actions, for me, every single unit that I start, it's absolutely important that we do have that pre-assessment. And it's just going to be really short, where we have a 10-point pre-assessment quiz. And what that will do is just to let me know just how much students do actually know before I get into substantial teaching. And here, the next thing I have is the videos that focus on cell activity. More importantly, these are introductory videos just to get to see what a cell looks like. For this, because we're talking about grade 7, we're talking about videos from like the Amoeba Sisters, we're talking about Bill Nye, we're talking about an age-old favorite of mine, the Magic School Bus. And these videos right here, it gives us a really rewarding and enriching view of what a cell looks like that they can actually understand and comprehend. The next thing that I recommend is just to go into teacher-led instruction, where we talk about cell discovery, comparison of the prokaryotes with the eukaryotes, and of course the different types of cells. Um, this is the bulk of the teaching. And of course, when I say the bulk of the teaching, this by no means that you're going to do all that in one PowerPoint, because remember, we have to ensure that we do teach our students in chunks as opposed to having this big, massive unit given to them at one time. The next thing I have there is the lab activity. Again, them creating and viewing those plant and animal cell slides. And then from this, the next thing I want them to do is to go ahead and do a foldable, where we get into that creativity, where they have to do that comparing and that contrast. What is in the middle? What is common to both of them? Just to get students to start thinking about how it is that how the two are different, the plant and animal cells, of course. The next thing is the creation of models of specialized animal cells. And this can be done within the class, where we talk about like Oreo cells, or different snacks to create the cell models of the cell. But for me, I think it's ideally best when we do send home the models to be made, because then we get students to start thinking outside the box. They start to do a little bit of research, as opposed to providing all the materials for them. Then we kind of take the guesswork out of it, and we don't get that true creativity that we expect to see from our students, because we've had everything laid out for them. Next one I have is the Venn diagram. And I love using Venn diagrams in science simply because it does tie in the math, because they're so used to doing Venn diagrams in mathematics. But however, I think it gives them a little bit more practice, giving them that cross-curricular application of different concepts. And I think that's absolutely important, because it's a very good visual. The next thing I have is using the videos again, and these videos now must focus on the differentiation and specialized cells, because that's a very important part of this unit. Now, once we've gone through the videos and we've gone through the framework of what exactly is a specialized cell, then the next thing is for students to take ownership of this content. And what I want students to go from this to do is to go ahead and do a project on specialized cells. And when I say a project, I'm really ideally saying a PowerPoint presentation. And what we're going to do here is that we're going to give students the opportunity to go out and research, find different images of those cells, find out their exact structural composition, find out what their functions are, and of course, they're now responsible for teaching their classmates about this. What this does for me personally is that it gives students that ownership of the material, because they have to create something with it, and they have to deliver it to their counterparts. So they are now experts in their own right, or their own field. And then lastly, just to go ahead, and I have another foldable here. Um, I think foldables are really important, especially in science, because they're very good graphic organizers to get students to actually process the information and go on to some amount of synthesis. Now, in order to assess this unit, and please note I'm not saying evaluate, but I'm saying assess this unit, there's many things I want us to look at. That lab report. So when the kids have gone in the lab and they've done all of that, the lab work in terms of creating the cell, they will be required to do a lab report, and from that we can assess to see how much mastery, what skills were developed, what do we need to reinforce the next time we do have a lab activity. The cell models, to see how it is that they represent their cells. And of course, we also talk about that quiz. One of the big things is to have very short assessments as we go along. And as such, I have the quizzes for cells. And of course, we have exit ticket, the exit ticket focusing on cellular function. And then the foldables. Foldables are very good. Like I said, they're excellent graphic organizers and it gives you a quick glance into how well students have assimilated the content that we've actually been going through. This one, the annotated drawing of the plant and animal. So this one is big. The reason why it's big because, like I said before, it is a skill that they are expected to learn when they move on to the 10th grade for biology. The group presentations will also be assessed in terms of how accurate the information is that they're portraying or they're sharing with their classmates. Of course, we will have some assessment in terms of the delivery and the creativity because we do want students to recognize that even in science there is still room for that creativity because oftentimes students are forced into a box thinking, oh, we cannot do anything outside of this because we're in science class. We do want to break that stereotype. Then lastly, we talk again about that foldable, very good graphic. Now, I have said a lot in this curriculum map. The last thing I want to touch on is those 21st century skills, more important, not more importantly, but we do have the scientific skills and we have the 21st century skills. If you look at those 5 skills, we have I have observing, communicating, classifying, inferring, recording, or reporting. These are skills that students are typically garnering as they go through different classes, but more importantly, as we go through science classes, it's important that in this unit they do get that exposure to these skills some more. And of course, in terms of 21st century skill, we talk about collaboration and teamwork, and we're going to see that in the group project, we're going to see that in the lab activities. The group project again will lend way for research and technology literacy, systems thinking, critical thinking, again going back to those foldables, going back to the lab activities. Now, to close out this session, I do want to talk about the importance of that social emotional learning component. And even though it's not depicted in this curriculum map, we bear in mind that students are working in groups for that project, and students will also be working in groups for that lab activity. And one of the big things is we talk about responsibility and being able to efficiently work together as a unit, where each person is actually pulling their own weight and no person becomes stressed out. I think it's absolutely, I think those 2 activities will lend for a very good social emotional learning component. I know I said earlier that this was going to be the last diagram or the last thing I was going to share, but there is one more thing I do want to share, and that is 2 of the assessment pieces. If we, let's see if this will come up. Very good. When you look at this, it's very, very to the point. This could be one of the exit tickets just to have students match these to see exactly how much they've understood or they recognize the function of the different things. And then, of course, there's one more I want to share, and that is a part of one of the PowerPoints that is prepared for this unit is, come on, the lab, there we go, is this slide, and I'm not looking at the right one, here we go. This slide that actually shows them how to create those slides of the onion cell, and of course, that of the cheek cell just being to take that swab and doing the exact same thing. And then of course, I want to finish with this right here. This is going to be, as you can see on the right, we do see a microscope image that has been recorded for them. And then, of course, on the right, on the left, we do show another image of what it will look like for them in their books. All right. I want to say thank you so much for listening. I hope that you do find this curriculum map rewarding. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you. Have a good night.